and thank you for joining me for this latest installment in ANJC's webinar series. My name is Charlie Kidd, and I am the Tribal Justice Supervising Attorney here at ANJC. And today I'm going to be talking with you during the next hour about how your tribe can weave its custom and traditions into your tribal law. So just a brief roadmap of where we are going to go during our hour together today. We're going to start by talking a little bit about what exactly tribal law is and what it's supposed to reflect. Then we are going to jump into a few recommendations and best practices for how your tribe can actually draft either an entirely new title of code or revise an existing title of code to better reflect your tribe's customs and traditions. And then we're going to spend the second half of the presentation looking at a few examples of Alaska tribes that have incorporated custom and tradition into their tribal codes or their tribal justice systems in some pretty unique and interesting ways, including Kake, Kinaxi, Clinton and Haida, and Selawik. So with that, let's get started. So whenever we are talking about tribal justice systems, it's always best to start by talking briefly about tribal sovereignty. And so tribal sovereignty at its core is really just a tribe's inherent right to govern itself and to make and enforce laws that are applicable to its tribal citizens. And you really can't talk about tribal sovereignty in the state of Alaska without at least mentioning the 1999 Alaska Supreme Court case John B. Baker, which dealt heavily with a tribe's ability to issue child custody decisions by its tribal court concerning tribal children. And so I just have a quote here from that case. The powers of Indian tribes are in general inherent powers of a limited sovereignty, which has never been extinguished. Before the coming of the Europeans, the tribes are self-governing, sovereign political communities. The sovereignty that the Indian tribes retain is of a unique and limited character. And so it's this sovereignty that allows tribes to be able to come up with its own tribal code system and to then apply these tribal codes to its citizens, as well as individuals who have some connection to the tribe. So here really are just a few of the most common areas of tribal law that we see Alaska tribes practicing. This certainly is not an exhaustive list, but it's just some of the most common laws that tribal courts are exercising. And a great starting place for a tribe that is interested in promulgating code and then exercising its code via a tribal court. So child welfare codes, think of this as an equivalent to a state China case, but essentially overseeing cases in which the well-being of tribal children is at issue, and potentially stepping in place of a parent who is unable to parent at a particular time. Domestic violence, so the ability to issue protective orders, namely to tribal citizens, either against other tribal citizens or against non-citizens who are committing domestic violence against a tribal citizen. Elder and vulnerable adult protection, so also protective orders on behalf of elders or vulnerable adults, such as financial abuse protective orders, but also guardianships, things like that. Domestic relations, so the ability to issue marriage certificates, or on the flip side, to offer divorces to tribal citizens, and to decide issues related to child custody for married or unmarried parents. Civil enforcement. And so when I say civil enforcement, I'm talking about essentially civil monetary penalties for certain crimes that are related to things like dumping or animal control, nuisance, alcohol or drug violations, things like that. And then trespassing, hunting, fishing, which are exactly as they sound. So let's talk more now about custom and tradition. So why, might you ask, is it important to make sure that your tribe's laws actually reflect your tribe's customs and traditions? There's a number of reasons. First and foremost, to strengthen tribal sovereignty. You've probably heard the saying that sovereignty is like a muscle. If your tribe doesn't exercise it, it grows weak, which is very true. So this is a great way to exercise your abilities as a sovereign nation and actually create your own laws that reflect the values of your community. Also important to incorporate custom and tradition into your laws to create greater buy-in from the community itself. So tribal citizens are going to feel a lot more inclined to actually respect the tribe's laws if it feels personal and if it reflects the values that they were brought up on. To capture custom and tradition in writing, to respect and protect it. So, a lot of customs and traditions are unwritten, and a great way to actually get them down on paper and ensure that they are available for future generations is to capture them in your code, which is a written document that will continue on in perpetuity until it's amended or done away with. Also to emphasize differences between tribal law and typical Western common law. So, this is really just another great way to exercise tribal sovereignty. It's to distinguish how the tribe operates from the state of Alaska with respect to things like domestic violence, child welfare, custody, divorce law. Your tribe's laws do not need to look the exact same as the state of Alaska's in these areas, and you can really show how your tribe's values are different from values shared by other Alaskans by making those values known in your codes. Also, to create opportunities to defer state criminal prosecutions for members in favor of alternative conflict resolution. So we're going to be talking more about this in subsequent slides, but there are some great ways in which your tribe can help its citizens avoid state criminal prosecution by instead resolving the issues that led to those state criminal charges in your tribal courts and ensuring that the sentences that are imposed really reflect what the tribe feels needs to happen in order for that individual to be a productive member of society again. And then finally, to support Indigenous languages. Tribal code is a great way to actually capture native languages and to make sure that they have a highly applicable use in your community. And we'll talk more about that as well as we continue along here. So what customs and traditions might your tribe have? So, just in terms of really gauging what a custom and tradition is, first, they tend to be unique to each tribe. So your tribe will have its own system of values and beliefs that really govern how citizens live their day-to-day lives. That might not apply in the village next door. Certainly might not apply to life in Anchorage, and it's those tenets that really are the basis of custom and tradition. That's not to say that there aren't customs and traditions that are shared either on a regional basis or by Alaska Natives across the state, and those two are ripe for incorporation into your tribe's laws. Customs and traditions also usually capture value systems. And so when I say value system, I'm talking about really those core rules that are essential to maintaining harmony and peace in society, right? So things like always maintaining respect for elders or respecting food sources, something as simple as keeping your dogs under control or not littering. Those as well are examples of values that might really be essential to supporting your tribe's customs and traditions. Typically, customs and traditions are part of an oral tradition. It's not like your tribe necessarily has a written code of customs and traditions that apply, but it's important to be thinking about customs and traditions as really habits, right? Things that are so common and expected that they are habitual. Often customs and traditions also deal with collective rights versus individual rights. And so when I say that, I'm talking about how the individual in the community reacts with the community as a large, and how the community's interests might come in place over an individual's interests. And ultimately, customs and traditions are essential to protecting the community. So they might be reflected in health and healing and practices that the community subscribes to maintain good health and to heal from harms in the community. They might reflect the community's approach and reliance on the environment and the resources that the tribe derives from the environment in terms of food or other sustenance. And they often also reflect the tribe's kinship systems. So when I say that, I mean really how different family members within the tribe interact with one another, and different responsibilities that are typically assigned to either a mom's side of the family or a father's side of the family, especially in child welfare cases. And so here I just have a few questions that you might think about asking yourself or your tribe at large in terms of thinking about how customs and traditions can be incorporated into your code. So first and foremost, what does your tribe value? What's important to your tribe, and what do you want to see reflected in the way tribal citizens are expected to conduct themselves under tribal law? What principles guide the way you live and interact with your community? Are there concepts that are appropriate to include in your written tribal laws? Is your native language known in your community, or does it need some support, and can it be disseminated by incorporating it into your tribal code? Can you translate language and concepts into English? This is important just to make sure that there is a clear translation for any native words that are incorporated into your code. What customs and traditions no longer apply? And then what customs and traditions are at risk of being lost? So again, tribal code is a great way for preserving customs and traditions and making sure that they are available for future generations. So where do you actually begin? I want to start on this slide by distinguishing the difference between revising an existing tribal code to better incorporate custom and tradition, and drafting an entirely new chapter of tribal code. There's a different process for both. If you are starting from scratch and drafting an entirely new chapter of tribal code, that can seem really overwhelming at first, but it really doesn't need to be. We live in a copy and paste world, and just about every tribe starts with a template when drafting a new chapter of tribal code. And this is okay. I think of this really as a way that we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, or support one another from tribe to tribe. There's a lot of really great templates out there that other tribes have already adopted that can serve as a great starting place for your tribe as you look to begin adopting laws related to child welfare or domestic violence. However, as you're going through this, you want to make sure that you are embracing your sovereignty and customizing that source material to fit your tribe's specific needs, and to make sure that it's actually reflecting your customs and traditions. And there's a couple of places in tribal code that are especially ripe for doing this. Some of these most obvious places would be the purpose section at the beginning of a chapter of tribal code. This section really just explains why the tribe feels the need to adopt a particular chapter of code and what the goals for adopting that code are. This is a great place to, for example, incorporate a list of traditional values that your village subscribes to. Another great place to incorporate custom and tradition is a definition section. So we spoke earlier about how using native language is itself a way to incorporate custom and tradition to code. And most tribal chapters of law contain a definition section near the beginning of the chapter. And this is a great place to substitute native words for English words for certain key concepts that occur throughout that chapter of law. And then another great place to incorporate custom and tradition is best interest factors. And these are usually found in child welfare or child custody codes and are really a set of factors that the tribal court is supposed to consider in terms of either a temporary or permanent placement for a child. And this is a great place to really emphasize what type of alternative placement the tribe deems most appropriate for a child. And oftentimes you see a best interest factor reflecting whether a placement will help ensure that that child grows up with access to traditional practices, traditional customs. And so that's another great place to make sure that those important customs and traditions that you want that child to be brought up with are being captured. So this slide here just contains a few important things to remember when going through the technical process of drafting or revising a tribal code. First, it's important to review and understand the scope of existing tribal law that your tribe has. And when I say tribal law, I'm talking about your tribe's constitution, any existing laws or codes, any ordinances, policies, regulations, resolutions that have been passed by the tribal council. You want to make sure that all of these things work together, not against one another. So you just want to make sure that by incorporating a custom or tradition into your tribal law, it's not conflicting with an existing expectation set out in one of these documents. It's also important to be aware of certain federal laws that require certain language be incorporated into tribal laws. Most of these laws are more specific to tribes that are exercising criminal jurisdiction, such as the Indian Civil Rights Act and the Tribal Law and Order Act. As far as ICWA goes, you just want to make sure that your child welfare laws have sufficient direction to the tribal court for taking on a tribal case that has been referred over from state court. And then the Violence Against Women Act, you just want to make sure that if your tribe is exercising special tribal criminal jurisdiction, which no Alaska tribes are doing quite yet, that you are actually listing the appropriate offenses that your tribe can apply special tribal criminal jurisdiction to, and also affording those non-native defendants the required rights in those types of cases. To the extent you are using native language in your codes, you want to make sure that those words receive a translation in the definitions section of the code. This way you can actually expect people to fully understand the code. You know, they don't have to be a native speaker to understand it, and you can ensure that you can apply the code against everyone because they have that notice of what words mean. It's helpful sometimes to consult with elders of the community as a whole about customs and traditions and to make sure that they are being accurately reflected and applied in your law. And then it's also important just to abide by your tribe's process for amending existing or adopting new code. Usually this is done by resolution of the tribal council. So you just want to make sure you're going through that full process. And then to the extent you feel like you need assistance, seek assistance when you feel like it would be helpful. And there are plenty of organizations out there that would be happy to provide assistance, including us here at ANJC. Also, there are a few best practices just for making sure that your tribal court staff is fully prepared and ready to go with actually implementing the customs and traditions that are reflected in tribal code. So, the reason we have judges in both Western and tribal courts is to help interpret the law when two parties disagree on what an outcome should be. And laws that incorporate customs and traditions are just as susceptible to laws that don't, to there being multiple interpretations of that law. So, assuming your tribal court involves multiple judges hearing a single case, it's possible that those judges disagree on how a particular custom or tradition should be actually applied in law. So it's just important to be able to talk these issues through as judges and figure out how to come to an understanding on what a law means. Values are inherently subjective, so it's not uncommon for judges to be in disagreement about whether one value should be placed over another, or exactly what a value means. So a few best practices just for making sure that judges as well as other court staff are really well versed in your tribe's customs and traditions. You might think about hosting some sort of culture camp where court staff can have some sort of retreat to get away and learn more about your tribe's customs and traditions and to put those customs and traditions into actual practice. You might also ensure that there are opportunities for court staff to participate in ceremonies, either opportunities for them to take time off from work to participate, or to actually host ceremonies right there in the court so that all court staff can benefit from them. It's also a good idea to have an elder mentor available for the court to easily call or communicate with about what a custom or tradition might mean as applied. Just always great to have that resource available at hand. And then finally, for purposes of tribes that are having attorneys appear in their tribal courts, it's not a bad idea to have a tribal court bar exam that attorneys must pass before they are allowed to appear in a tribal court case. This way, you can assure that that attorney really understands the customs and traditions that are being incorporated into your law and understand the significance of them to your community. So your tribe's customs and traditions can also be incorporated into the outcomes of cases, both in tribal court as well as in state court, and particularly with respect to outcomes in cases involving some sort of wrongdoing, whether it be a criminal case or it be something more like a civil enforcement case like we talked about earlier. And there are some really great models that are ripe for incorporating more traditional sentences. First, we have restorative justice circles. So these are a type of tribunal in which a circle keeper will assemble members of the community who are impacted by a certain harm that is occurring in the community. And they will all get together along with the individual who has been accused of committing that harm. And the idea here is that the community makes it clear to the wrongdoer how their behavior is impacting the community as a whole, and tries to help them understand why their conduct needs to change. Eventually, you work through coming to an understanding about the impacts and about what needs to change. and then the participants in the circle are able to make recommendations for what the wrongdoer can do in order to restore harmony to the community. So an agreement has come to, as well as an understanding about how that wrongdoer will meet benchmarks in order to really confirm that they have corrected the harms. And this really allows, like I said, for the community as a whole to participate in coming to a solution that restores that harmony. Another model is a healing to wellness court. You might sometimes see this referred to as by the youth as an H2W court. But these are essentially courts that use a wraparound approach to ensure that the individual at issue is receiving all of the services needed to correct their behavior. Usually these courts are dealing with either youth or individuals who have substance use problems. And they provide direct links to service providers to be able to provide treatment necessary to become a healthy, functioning member of the community again. In terms of collaborating with the state court system, we have Alaska Rule of Criminal Procedure 11I referrals. These are agreements that you can execute with the court system in advance that allow state court judges in criminal cases involving tribal citizens to seek input from your tribe as to how the state court judge should sentence the tribal citizen. And so you were able to make recommendations for things like participating in culturally relevant activities, substance use counseling, restitution to the victim of the crime, really things that are, again, intended to restore that harmony to the community as opposed to just pass a punitive sentence on that individual. And then finally, we have civil diversion agreements. And these are also agreements that can be entered into with the state in advance that allow for certain state criminal cases to be diverted to tribal court. We are able to have things like Class B misdemeanors, local option alcohol possession cases, minor in possession cases, assault 4 cases diverted to tribunals such as a restorative justice circle for adjudication instead of having that proceed forward in state criminal court and resulting in potentially in a state criminal charge for the tribal citizen. So just a few examples of also some culturally oriented sentences that your tribal court can consider utilizing. We have culture camps. So we talked about these with respect to educating court staff on tribal custom and tradition, but these can also be used for individuals who are appearing in court for wrongdoing. So requiring them to participate in a week-long camp that really instills the tribe's traditional ways of living in them to help them reconnect with their culture is a fairly common approach. Also, assigning chores that are intended to make either the victim of the wrongdoing or the village as a whole make the victim or the village whole again, such as chopping wood, catching or cleaning fish, hauling water, supporting the school by working with kids or by working with elders. These are really usually the most effective punishments for restoring a community after a harm has been completed because they benefit the community. It's not about punishing the wrongdoer and having them serve some lengthy sentence in jail and making them disappear from the community, that really ultimately does no one good. But when you can make them actually do something that benefits the community as a whole, that really is a best approach to take. And the role of substance use treatment also can help reflect custom and tradition in the way that it essentially restores somebody who has been removed from the community because they are under the influence or unavailable to participate in the community because they are so consumed by their addiction, and making them a productive and contributing member of the community again. So substance use treatment alone might be the best way to support custom and tradition through your tribal court's sentencing model. So we've come to the portion of the presentation where we are going to talk a little bit about a few examples of Alaska tribes that have really incorporated custom and tradition in a pretty unique way. And I believe we have some attendees today from most, if not all, of these tribes, actually. So I'm going to open up the stage at the end of the presentation to these attendees to speak a little bit more about their tribe's unique approach to incorporating custom and tradition into their tribal justice systems. So I want to start with the Organized Village of Cake and their Circle Peacemaking Court. So this was founded by local magistrate Judge Mike Jackson back in 1999. He had noticed an increase in alcoholism and also a suicide crisis in his community, and he wanted to try to incorporate Clicket culture and tradition into trying to make the community a healthier and more wholesome place. So he sought the assistance of several First Nation tribes that had started utilizing a restorative justice model in the 1990s and brought a similar model to Cake. And using this model, really anyone, a prosecutor, a victim, a defendant in a criminal case can seek to have their case referred to the peacemaking circle as an alternative, and then proceed using a similar peacemaking circle model to what I described on the previous slide. And so here we have the Cake Peacemaking Circle manual. This is an interesting little bit of ANJC history here, but you see at the bottom of the cover that the Alaska Native Justice Center actually helped collaborate on this way back in 2005, so well before my time here. But here on page 4 of the manual, we have a list of Native values that apply in general. Again, customs and traditions, they can be very, very specific to the tribe, or they can be broader values that really govern Alaska Native life in general. But then beneath that, we have more specifically Clicket values that apply in this peacemaking circle, including respect for self and others, remembering and applying Native traditions, responsibility, truth, and wise use of words. So a great example of really just making the value system that the tribe follows front and center in the conduct of the justice system. Next, we have the Kenaitze Tribe's Henu Community Wellness Court. So this court is a joint jurisdictional court that's operated by both the Kenaitze Tribe and the Alaska court system. And when I say joint jurisdictional, I mean that judges from both jurisdictions preside over cases in the court, and both jurisdictions can refer cases to the court. So, this is a therapeutic model, so it's utilizing those wraparound services to make sure that the individuals who are participating in court have everything that they need in order to be successful. So primarily this court is focusing on individuals who have exhibited problematic conduct because of alcohol use or other substance use addiction. So the court is really integrally involved with that individual's continued participation in substance use treatment, and serves as a regular check-in to make sure that they are making progress toward becoming a functioning member of society again. And the court often oversees cases involving individuals who have open child in need of aid cases in state court, though it's not directly handling those cases, but just another great way, another great example of how the court itself is able to help reunite children with their biological parents as well. So this is the list of the HENU court's top priorities as taken directly from the court's brochure. But we see here that really the priorities are intertwined with embracing and ensuring that custom and tradition is front and center and supported. So treating and healing substance use. Again, we've already talked about how substance use itself can be an enemy to sustaining custom and tradition. Restoring a participant's ties to the community, making sure that they're available to be active in the tribe's customs and traditions. Restoring relationships, increasing self-sufficiency, breaking the cycle of recidivism, placing children in safe homes, again, related directly to custom and tradition, making sure that the next generation has safe and healthy parents from which they can learn customs and traditions, and giving back to the community through volunteer efforts. So there is that example of a sentence that might involve actually benefiting the community as opposed to just locking somebody up. Also, the HENU court is a great example of incorporating native language into tribal law. So HENU itself means to work or a job in the Katanatana Dena'ina language, and it embodies the willingness to be a productive and helpful member of society. We have the Kinaitsi value wheel here on the left, and if you look down at the bottom left, there you have HENU as one of the essential spokes in the wheel itself. And the ultimate goal of the court is for participants to be able to, again, walk in beauty, right? And I'm not going to try to pronounce this word, but again, incorporating native language into the code to reflect what the ultimate goals are for participants in the court. Next example I'd like to share is the Tlingit and Haida tribes. And specifically, I want to take a deep dive into their child and family code. So this is an excerpt from the purpose section of that code. And again, purpose sections, you typically find those near the beginning of a chapter of code, and they really describe the overall reason that the tribe feels that there needs to be specific code addressing that issue, and what the goals for adopting this code ultimately are for the community. So right at the beginning of this purpose section, we have a clear recognition of different forms of customs and traditions and how they can be reflected in code. So the code reads, the Tlingit and Haida cultures shall be given due recognition in the application of the statute by honoring and utilizing the natural support systems of our tribal and clan relationships and the traditional ways of our people that includes our culture, language, songs, dance, stories, respecting our elders, and tribal values. And then it goes on to really include a statement that I think acknowledges how customs and traditions are transient over time, that they're a great way of holding on to the past and applying a tribe's history to future conduct. So we have While many aspects of our cultural practices and lifestyles have changed within our villages and communities of Southeast Alaska, the underlying authority of the Tlingit and Haida clan systems have endured and still exist today. Continuing on, the purpose section recognizes the impact that alcohol and substance abuse have had on the community and on individual tribal citizens, and recognizes that addiction acts essentially as an enemy to culture and tradition. It recognizes that it's closely linked to the loss of our traditional ways of life, roles, and support systems for tribal members, and that it has affected the cohesion and stability of the tribal family unit. Continuing on, it recognizes the importance of genealogy and heritage and how important it is for children to know where they come from for purposes of continuing on as culture bearers in the future. It reads, our children, viewed as the seeds of our future, are traditionally treated with care, shown their place in the world, and taught how they relate to the clan system and the community. They possess an identity that is based in their kinship, so it reflects the importance of healthy parents being able to act as that kin to their children. Or in the alternative, it reflects the need for extended family members to step in when biological parents are unavailable to meet the needs of those children. It identifies those traditional roles of extended family members. We don't have cousins, we have brothers and sisters. Our mother's sister is mother, our father's brother is uncle, our father's sister is auntie. Our clan system is and remains a part of the child. Even when they are raised outside the clan, they are still related. Traditionally, a child stayed within a clan house, first with auntie, then with aunt. We never had orphans, we took care of our own. So, it's reflecting essentially a list of individuals who would be expected to step in when biological parents are unavailable. And this itself can be seen kind of as a list of placement preferences for child welfare cases. If a child can no longer go on living with their biological parents, then it might be expected to first look to see if their maternal aunt is available to step in. But it also recognizes the opposite clan was always available to take in a child, but only if there was no one available from the child's clan. So again, here's that placement preference system at work here, and talking about priorities and who should be looked to first to step in as a parent. And then finally, it talks a bit about the role of termination in a child welfare case. And obviously, termination is never preferred. But it's a difficult and necessary consideration in some child welfare situations where biological parents just are unable to do what they need to do to be a healthy parent again. And so it also talks about how situations involving a child needing some help would typically be addressed by the tribe. It reads here, the situation was discussed at a roundtable as to what was best for clan and community and the child, and the decisions were made in a manner that was non-judgmental toward families. So again, here we have a recognition of the fact that the tribe has long been able to address issues related to the welfare of its children as its own sovereign entity. This is something that it has been doing long before it officially had a tribal court in place. But the tribal court now is able to continue adopting and utilizing these practices to make sure that these matters of importance to the tribe are being handled internally by the tribe and by the folks who know the community best. So just a really great example of a purpose section here with Tlingit and Haida. I also want to just turn the spotlight briefly on a very unique title of Clinton and Haida Code, the establishment of tribal schools. And this entire title, in my perspective, is geared at sustaining and nurturing custom and tradition. So here in the purpose section, we have the purpose of tribal schools are to perpetuate the languages and cultures of the Tlingit and Haida people of Alaska. And we have a very unique mission statement written entirely in the Tlingit language and then followed up with an English translation. And then finally, a vision section that really, I think, acts as a great goal setting and way by which the effectiveness of this portion of code can be measured. So the vision is for children to be fully fluent in their Indigenous languages, fully competent in college level English, and a 100% graduation rate. So envisioning a community in which the Tlingit language is fully embraced and known by everyone. So just a very unique example of how tribal law and code can not only incorporate custom and tradition, but be used to help perpetuate it. And then finally, I want to share an example that's very near and dear to my heart, and this is Selawik up in Northwest Arctic. And so this is a tribe that ANJC actually worked with over the past year. Back in March of last year, we had received a request from the tribe to help them make their tribal code better reflect their community. They had adopted several titles of tribal code related to child welfare and domestic violence, domestic relations, several decades previously. And these, as with many other tribal code chapters, were based on templates. And so they hadn't really been personalized in any way. And the tribe just wanted to feel more connected to the laws that they wanted to actually have apply in their community. So they did have a fairly active tribal court at this point. It was predominantly handling child welfare cases. And so that was really the chapter of code that we honed in on and that we helped them work through. And so here in this picture, I just have a plaque that they had in their school library reflecting the Inupiat value system. And this proves to be really valuable to our work with them. So what did we ultimately do with Selawik? We went up there March 24th through 26th, and we conducted a 3-day review and listening session with the tribal council, which also serves as their tribal court. And so we basically went section by section, word by word, through both their judicial code, which applies to tribal court cases of all types in their tribal court, so child welfare cases, domestic relations cases, but then also the child welfare code that is more specific to child welfare cases. And so we went section by section and we asked the council, first, do we understand what this means? Is this written in a way that actually is comprehensible by both the court itself, but also by tribal citizens who the law applies to? And then we asked them, does this actually reflect the tribal court's actual practice? So to the extent an existing section just did not make sense or could not practically be applied, the tribal court had started adopting different ways of conducting tribal court business. And we wanted to really figure out what those different ways were so that we can make sure that the revised code actually reflected those different ways. And then finally, we asked, does this procedure embrace the community's customs and traditions? And what we did was we incorporated that list of Inupiat values from the previous slide into the purpose section of the Child Welfare Code, and then started adopting different values as we went through the code in places that we thought would really best embrace those values. So, the way I saw this this work with Solid, we really were there just as much for our benefit as well as for the tribe's benefit, because we learned so much about the tribe's customs and traditions by being able to spend this time with them and dive deep into their tribal code with them. So ultimately what we did was we took what we learned from them back with us to Anchorage, and over the following few months we revised the judicial and child welfare codes for them to, like I said, incorporate that list of values and include references to those values throughout the code as appropriate, to incorporate certain Inupiat words into really key concepts throughout the code. I believe we renamed both the circle keeper for their restorative justice circle using an Inupiat word, as well as foster homes for children in the child welfare case. And then we also just helped simplify the procedures reflected in the code to better reflect how the tribal court actually conducted business, so that the code made sense and just felt more realistic to the tribe. And then several months later, we provided these revised chapters of code, which were subsequently adopted by the tribal council. And from my experience, it's best to end a presentation with a picture of a cute animal. So I've included a picture of a really adorable puppy that we met in Sulliwick, and that actually ended up coming back with us on the plane to Anchorage. One of our staff members helped adopt this puppy out to a friend. And so what better way to end a presentation than with a picture of a cute dog. So I just want to thank all of you for spending your lunch hour with me today. I hope this was helpful, and I hope to see you all at some future ANJC webinars.